Data centers in space have gotten a lot of attention recently, or at least the prospect of having data in space one day is one that billionaires cannot stop talking about. The roots of that excitement in some ways tie back to our recent reporting that SpaceX is looking to go public next year, but as per usual, there is a lot more to that story. I want to bring on Nick Wingfield, our features editor who co-authored a great piece on that topic over the weekend. Nick, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
You ended off last week and you're starting us off this week. It is very much the Nick Wingfield show here. So where did the origin of this idea of putting data centers in space? I mean, did it start with Elon Musk? Were there startups who have been working on this for a long time? Just talk a little bit about that.
It actually didn't. I mean, you would think Elon Musk would have been one of the first to talk about this. He founded and leads the leading rocket company on the planet. He has the largest constellation of communication satellites out there in low Earth orbit. So it would have been a natural thing for him to start talking about it. But in fact, he really just started to get very vocal about it this past week. Prior to that, I had noticed more talk from startups. Jeff Bezos has talked a bit more about this topic. And we wrote a story actually or earlier this year, really about how the notion of space data centers, orbital data centers was starting to pick up. And then before that, it's been a science fiction. I mean, maybe not the data center part of it, but the notion of having satellites doing, industrious things in space has been around for quite a while.
Now, it's a big lift, and I want to talk about some of the challenges here. But if we just sort of stick with the 10-year vision here, I mean, what problems could this solve? Is it power that's the big problem here?
Power is a big one. The story that I wrote over the weekend was largely about, like, what does this say? The fact that this is really starting to pick up right now. What does this say about data centers on Earth? There are people out there who believe that, that power, free 24/7 power, solar power, is a very compelling reason to put data centers in space. There's also a cooling element to it too, which is related to power and also water. In space, though, the cooling challenges have really not been figured out. And if you want to look for skeptics of the notion of orbital data centers, they really tend to focus in on this. Musk thinks that it's, or says that it's, free cooling essentially, but I'm not sure that technical problem has been solved. Now, the other thing that I think this says is that data centers on Earth are, in many cases, running into obstacles, connecting to the power grid, but also people don't want these data centers in some of their communities. You're starting to see reports of protests and slowing down the process. And theoretically, putting them up in space could allow you to cut through all of that red tape.
Right. So, I mean, in terms of the challenges, they haven't figured out the cooling. I remember in that story that we wrote about a year ago or something like that. Also space debris was another issue, right? The idea that these things could, I don't know, knock into other satellites or something like that.
Well, some of the mock-ups that I've seen, in particular from a startup called StarCloud, show these vast solar arrays. I think that their mock-up is something like a 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer solar array. So just taking up a massive amount of space. And if you imagine a lot of these things in space, then yeah, I think, space collisions become a real concern. Now, there may be ways to mitigate that by, making sure that obsolete data centers are deorbited, and you reduce the amount of junk effectively in space. But I still think that's a big issue that these companies are going to have to figure out in the future.
One of the things that you pointed out, and there's a great chart in the story, is you talked a little bit about how the cost of launching things into space has been coming down, and SpaceX plays a large part of that. I mean, is that really the key data point here that is propelling the idea that we could get anything in space, conceivably?
One of them for sure. And Right now, SpaceX, which is the most prolific launcher of rockets anywhere, has brought the cost down dramatically through the reusable rockets. I think the estimates that we have in our chart is for the Falcon Heavy, which is their kind of their biggest rocket, that they're now down to about $1,500 per kilogram of payload. They
Hmm.
have this giant new rocket, Starship, that they are trying to, really get rolling. And that rocket, some people think could come down into the hundreds of dollars within a few years. So that starts to open up the possibility of bringing up a lot more payloads.
Right.
And then you also have competitors to SpaceX. Really, it's been a kind of SpaceX show for quite some time now. But Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos's rocket company, has successfully launched payloads from their big rocket, their Starship equivalent, which is called New Glenn. But they really have to get those rockets rolling. And then you have a number of other smaller startups that could also introduce more competition and help lower prices.
Right. So last question for you, Nick. Now you've studied the space sector at least from afar, for the past couple decades as you've been a reporter. Given what you've seen now with the momentum in the sector, do you think it's realistic? I mean, 10 years from now, do we have data centers in space, or is it really just an idea, an Elon Musk sized idea, maybe?
There are not too many topics in tech where I can say that I don't really know. I mean, it's extraordinary to see some of the smartest, most powerful, richest people in tech, Jensen Huang, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, all starting to talk about data centers in space as really the only solution
Right.
uh, to the long-term AI compute problem.
Right.
Then whenever you write about this, you will get engineers, space people, like data center people telling you why you're an idiot and why this will never work for X, Y, and Z reason. Radiation zapping the chips. The cooling issue is not solved. I mean, there are just so many different objections
Yeah.
to this whole concept. Will they get compute into space? That's already happening. There are starting to be demonstrations of NVIDIA chips going up. And this past week, StarCloud announced that they had trained an LLM, a small one, on a satellite effectively. So people will do this. Will it ever scale up to the level of actually solving the AI compute problem? I think that's really uncertain, and we're going to
Yeah.
have to start to see people try it.
Let me ask you one more question, Nick. I mean, I always wonder how much of these innovation discussions are bull market behavior. I mean, if the market was down, right? If we were sort of watching the stock market slip and maybe the bubble bursts in a way that people are, waiting for it to. I mean, do you think this gets as much attention if people are worried about the fundamentals a little bit more?
Well, I mean, AI compute is the bigger question. Like, what happens to that if we tip into a bear market? All of a sudden, maybe AI starts to grow more slowly, and we can meet the AI compute needs here on the planet.
Right.
But if you assume that AI growth is going to the moon, literally, then then yeah, space data centers start
Right.
to make more sense. I think the other thing here that we haven't really talked too much about is that the reason we're hearing about this right now is because Elon Musk wants to take SpaceX public, and this
Right.
gives him an opportunity to tap into the AI story effectively for SpaceX. It's already a pretty compelling business. They dominate the launch market. They have the most satellite. They have the dominant position in satellite internet. If they can get a piece of this like AI compute
Right. The
market,
story
then
becomes much more compelling.
totally, totally.
Great. Well, Nick, I want to thank you for coming on. It was a great piece, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.